talks go well this weekend between Secretary Bessent and Ambassador Greer with their Chinese counterparts, not preemptively, but if the talks go well, would you then consider lowering the tariff rate on China?
Well, it could be. I mean, we're going to see. Right now, you can't get any higher. It's at 145, so we know it's coming down. I think we're going to have a very good relationship. You know, I always got along very well with President Xi. That relationship was greatly disturbed by COVID when COVID came in, but we get along very well now. I mean, the relationship was hurt with a lot of people, a lot of countries when COVID came in. But I think we're going to have a very good relationship. I expect to have a very good relationship with China, Scott. I think it's a very friendly meeting. They look forward to doing it in an elegant way. China, as you know, has a tremendous trade surplus with us, and we just can't have that. And but I think it's going to be very good for both countries. I would like to see China opened. You know, one of the big things here is, and nobody would know this, but the UK was largely closed. It was very much closed to trade, and now it's opened. And a lot of the financial reporters are very happy about that because so much. I listened to them. Well, I hope they get countries opened up, and then you compete on a fair basis. But you can't compete when you're not allowed to go there. China would be the number one example of that. You know, it's very closed. We almost had it last time before COVID, and that didn't work out. But we made a great deal with China. They had to buy $50 billion worth of our food products, and it was a great deal, doing very well for our farmers. And then when Biden came in, as usual, nothing happened. You know, he didn't enforce it, and it got less, and ultimately, you know, it destroyed a great deal. That was a great deal. But no, I think that we're going to have a good weekend with China. I think they have a lot to gain. I do think they have far more to gain than we do, in a sense. But we're going to have I think we're going to have a very good weekend.
Will you speak to Xi after the weekend talks?
I might, yeah, sure. Depending on what Scott says, we Scott is doing certain countries, and Howard's doing certain countries. I mean, I wish I had like 10 more of each. Then we could do them all at one time. But there will be a time we'll do a number of them, and then there'll be a time. I think I can say this, Scott and Howard, where we're just going to say, because we understand the countries, we understand what they want, where we're just going to make the deal. In other words, we don't need the country involvement because we've already had it. And we'll say this particular country, which had big surpluses, let's say, we had therefore deficits, that this particular country is going to pay a 25% tariff, or a 30%, or a 50%, or 10%, or whatever it may be. I think we should explain it now, Howard. One of the things we did here that we'll rarely do is on cars, we took it from 25 to 10 on Rolls-Royce, because Rolls-Royce is not going to be built here. I wouldn't even ask them to do that. You know, it's a very special car, and it's a very limited number too. It's not, you know, one of the monster car companies that makes millions of cars. They make a very small number of cars that are super luxury, and that includes Bentley and Jaguar. So we have some very special cars. So in order to help that industry, and that's really, you know, handmade stuff. And they've been doing it for a long time in the same location. And I said, yeah, that would be good. Let's help them out with that one. But that's different than a car company that comes out and makes millions of cars, which they'll be doing in our country. They're going to build, we have many factories, car plants being built or going to be built very soon. I think we can say that we'll be close to $10 trillion of investment. I think we're actually at that number now if you add up some of the ones we haven't heard about yet. I mean, we have some going up right now. They have plants going up, and they haven't even spoken to us. They're doing it because of the tariffs. And tariffs have always been used against us, and I never understood. I used to sit back. As you know, China paid hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs when I was president. But until then, China never paid anything. And, you know, they really did a big number on us from the standpoint of trade. But we are using tariffs now for our benefit. And we have now close to $10 trillion. Think of that, $10 trillion. If you look at the past administration, and we're talking about over, you know, essentially 2 months, because we could say 3, but it took a little while to get the office in perfect shape, right? It took a little while to get things done. But once we started, when you think of that, close to $10 trillion of investment, You've had years where the United States wouldn't do that wouldn't do 1 trillion in a year, wouldn't do anywhere near 1 trillion. We did 10 trillion in 2 months. So it's amazing what's happening. We're getting calls from, and that has to do with chips, has to do with cars. We used to make chips. We had Intel, and we used to make chips. We had a monopoly on chips. Everything was made here. And now, over a period of years, because of presidents that didn't know what they were doing, they allowed that business to be stolen from us. Most of it moved to Taiwan. And you probably were in the same position, right? Because you had a lot of the chip-making capacity, but they moved it in. And if we would have said, that's fine, if you want to move it to Taiwan, that's good. But if you want to sell back into the United States, we're going to put a 50% or 100% tariff on, they would have never left. But we had people sitting here that didn't understand that, and it's too bad. But now they're coming back because I'm saying it about 40 years too late, but they're coming back. As you know, we have the biggest chip makers in the world spending, in one case, $300 billion, in one case, $500 billion, same as Apple, and in another case, $200 billion. And we're going to have a large share, a very, very substantial share of the chip-making market.
You said that this weekend is going to be a friendly visit, but do you expect that it will just be a formality to break the ice, or are they going to get into substantive negotiations?
I believe so, yes. I believe it's substantive, yes. I think people like to say, yes, we're having a meeting to meet. Well, we're meeting, so what are we going to do? Talk about meeting again? I think it's going to be substantive. I think we can say that, right, Scott? Very substantive. Now, China wants to do something. And look, they have to at this point. You know, essentially, they made $1 trillion a year, and now they have absolutely, no business because of the tariffs. They have no business. And they want to have business, and we want them to have business. We want them to do well. We want them to do very well. So I think it's going to be very substantive.
Because business has slowed down, as you mentioned.
In China.
But we're seeing as a result, the ports here in the U.S., the traffic has really slowed, and now thousands of dock workers and truck drivers are worried about their jobs.
Yeah, no, that means we lose less money. When I see that, that means we lose less money. Look, China was making over $1 trillion, 1.1 trillion, in my opinion. Different numbers from 500 billion to $1 trillion or $1.1 trillion. I think it was 1.1 trillion. And frankly, if we didn't do business, we would have been better off. Okay, you understand that. So when you say it slowed down, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. But we're going to make it so they can. I'd like to say they can do better, actually, in terms of the bottom line. We'd like to see China opened up so we can compete in China and, give people something that they've never had, access to something. That'd be great for the world. It would be great for our businesses. And I think it would be great for friendship. I really expect a lot of people think I'm a militant guy. I'm really not. I think that trade can bring a greater friendship with China. It can be something good. But, one of the things that I know Scott's going to be talking about very high on the list is open up and let our businesses go into China, because when you talk about a closed country, that's a really closed country. And I think it would be great if it was opened up. It would give people a lot of choice and would create a lot of jobs, a lot of everything. So I think it would be a great thing for China. And that's going to be one of the things we'll be discussing, like we discussed with UK.